Ara Blue here, back at it again for part 2 of my intrusive thoughts video. So if you have not already seen part 1, you can just look through my videos. You can find it. It's the one that was uploaded right before this on Monday. I'll try and leave a link in the description. So yeah, this video is going to be an extension of a continuation rather of my intrusive thoughts video. And this video is specifically going to deal with how to deal with intrusive thoughts. Because, in the first part, I like to kind of go into what the thing is and some examples of the thing. And then my second half, part 2, is going to be more about how to deal with it and how to navigate it. And again, I'm kind of sticking with that same chilled, laid back format where I'm going to be sipping tea throughout this video. I wanted to do the whole coffee talkies thing again. I started doing a series called Coffee Talkies and I forgot about it. And so I want to pick it back up and just start kind of sipping tea in my videos, or at least in that specific series of videos. And you might hear some tea slurps. And I just hope that that's like kind of more laid back and relaxing given the genre of the video. Mental health is hard to talk about, and maybe the sounds of tea slurping make it more relaxing. Haha, math. But yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and just jump right into it. So yeah, this is going to be more ways you can kind of navigate intrusive thoughts and things we can do to kind of handle them, make them more manageable, because for a lot of us it's very hindering and they're unavoidable. So yeah, I'm going to jump into it. So the first step to kind of dealing with intrusive thoughts is to first acknowledge that you're having an intrusive thought and your body's having a visceral reaction to said intrusive thought. So I know I've struggled with this personally, but whenever I've had an intrusive thought, and I don't do this as much anymore, but I still do it from time to time, I do this thing where I'll start to have an intrusive thought or an intrusive thought-based panic and or anxiety attack. And when I do it, I just allow it to sweep me up. It's like a tidal wave that hits me. It's like some monster has grabbed me into its arms and just gathered me up and just ran with me, and there's no escaping. And, people always say we are not our thoughts. Like, we are the sky, and our thoughts and our emotions are the weather or the clouds, and we are not our thoughts. But when you're having an intrusive thought, it feels like you are your thoughts. If anything, it feels like your thoughts are God, and you are just like a mere little speck. Like, your thoughts become a monster that eats you alive, and it's horrible, and it feels as though there's no controlling it. But the first step to fixing any problem is identifying you have a problem. And so what you have to begin to do is identify that you are in fact having an intrusive thought, and this starts to happen with mindfulness. So I don't want to say start meditating, because it's just, meditating can be so horrendous for people with intrusive thoughts. Any amount of silence can trigger some of the scariest PTSD or CPTSD episodes you have ever had. And it's one of those things where silence is golden and it's important, and your best and most creative self lies in the silence, but also your scariest and darkest and most intrusive thoughts also lie in the silence. And so in order to start doing this, for me, it's just taken a lot of practice and a lot of trial and error, but I have begun to successfully be able to identify when I'm having an intrusive thought. So if I'm folding my laundry and I get an intrusive thought or something because I'm listening to music and a song comes on that reminds me of somebody, or it reminds me of something somebody said to me or whatever, my body will start having that visceral reaction, and I'll start getting hot in the face. I'll start kind of glaring, being really upset, thinking about all the things I should have done. I might start mumbling under my breath like, oh man, I should have done this. Why didn't I do that? I'm just so stupid. How dare I? I start getting really upset, and I have to immediately be like, I'm having an anxiety attack, or like, I'm having an intrusive thought. You have to be able to identify it, or else nothing else is going to work. You have to be able to identify it first before you do anything else. And so get in the habit of, whenever you're having an intrusive thought, observe it. So you can practice that by taking the time to sit 5 minutes every day. And if an intrusive, just sit down and just for 5 minutes, even 1 minute. And if an intrusive thought comes your way, identify it. Oh, that's an intrusive thought. And that can really help. Other ways to start, like, it just takes practice, honestly. I don't know if there's any real exercise you could do to practice it, but just observing your thoughts, stepping outside of yourself and being like, I'm having a panic attack, or like an intrusive thought. And that way, I don't know if everybody's intrusive thoughts are as like visceral as mine tend to be, but you're stopping your brain. Your brain isn't thinking about that intrusive thought. It's thinking about you thinking about you're having an intrusive thought. And that allows you to slow down, if that makes any sense. It allows you to slow down, and therefore you're able to kind of start to take a course of action, because the intrusive thought is still going to run its course, but this time you're acknowledging that it's happening, and you can then kind of create an emergency plan. You have to create a sort of emergency plan. And so yes, the first step is identifying that you are in fact having an intrusive thought. So the second thing is a really quick thing, but once you identify you're having an intrusive thought, what I've found that also helps people to slow down, and again, this isn't like a remedy, and this is going to sound so cliche and so stupid, so try not to punch me through the screen, but once you identify it, just get in the habit of identifying you're having an intrusive thought, and then breathe in, breathe out. And I know that's like, shut the hell up, Ara, but it's like, no. Like, I don't mean that in like, yeah, just breathe. Like, we all breathe. Don't tell me to breathe. If I didn't breathe, I'd die. So don't tell me to breathe. But, it gets annoying when you're having like issues and somebody's like, you just need to breathe. Like, gee, didn't think of that. Thanks, Becky. But I think, once you identify that you're having an intrusive thought, it'll help to slow you down and to ground you. Because when you're having an intrusive thought, you imagine it's kind of like you're in a tornado. Your body starts floating up in the air and you start getting swept up in the wind. And when you breathe in and breathe out, you float back down to earth. And so just take one breath in and one breath out. And once you do that, it kind of the whole point of these first two steps is to kind of you're disrupting the intrusive thought enough to start to decide, hey, you're gonna, like, if the intrusive thought is a straight line, you're kind of cutting the tip of the line, the very beginning of the line, in, like, you're disconnecting it from the rest of the line and kind of inserting like a little circle. You're inserting another thought where you're like, okay, I see this starting to happen. Like, I see this constant starting to happen, and I'm going to kind of put a bump in the line as a way to represent me kind of penetrating my decision to observe this thought. So you're thinking about the fact that you're having an intrusive thought. Take a breath in, take a breath out. You're kind of disengaging with the intrusive thought before it starts ruining your life again. And then when you breathe in, breathe out, you can kind of stop and be like, okay, I can take a course of action now. So from this point, there is a wide variety of things you can do. So for me, I kind of go into self-care mode, and I'm a busy bee. I've stated this in other videos. I am a very busy bee. So I'm that person who, if I just sit stationary, I get like stir crazy. And so I'm always working on projects. I have my YouTube channel. I'm starting my own small business. I'm in school. Like, I have a bunch of things going on, and I keep myself really busy, because if I don't, that's when my intrusive thoughts start to get really bad. So from here, a thing I always find helpful, and again, this is another really cliche thing, but if you're at home, I suggest, if you have incense or a candle, light them. A lot of times, like, a change in the environment, even if it's a subtle change, like lighting a candle or lighting some incense, a change in the environment can help you kind of disconnect. Like, instead of getting wrapped up in your intrusive thought, your brain's like, oh, that's a nice smell. Like, your brain's kind of like grabbing onto something else as opposed to getting entrenched into the thought. And so right now, the whole point of all these things that I'm about to mention is to keep you grounded. The intrusive thought is like a monster that's going to pick you up and start like sprinting with you, like a horse that's just sprinting through a field. Like, it's going to grab you. Horses don't grab you up and run, thank God. I'd be so afraid. See a horse like barreling towards you and picking you up and running. But, think of like a monster just grabbing you and running as fast as it can. That's kind of what an intrusive thought is. And so essentially, you want to, again, like, light incense, light a candle, something that's going to distract you. And then from there, I know for me personally, and this may sound silly, I love to sing. And so I personally will start to sing, because what I've noticed is if I'm singing, I can't sing and hear the intrusive thought at the same time. And so I start to sing, and singing is a passion of mine. I want to share more of my singing on here, but it's something that kind of takes me away from the intrusive thought itself, and it allows me to kind of like like it allows me to, like, my brain can't process a song and process an intrusive thought at the same time, so it starts to kind of release me and allow me to like relax. Also, same thing happens if I read a novel, not like a self-help book, like a novel. If I sit down, I put in some headphones and I like start to read a novel, it typically does a similar thing, but that's not good. Like that only works like for me like maybe like 5% of the time. When you're having an intrusive thought, it's like a very visceral, violent reaction. Like your body, what might start, like you feel like you have to like, you want to like sprint across the room and like bang your head into the wall. Like it's not one of those things where it's like, I'm gonna read a book. So for me, I typically also going outside, taking just a step outside can help. These are just little things. What I've realized does not help me. So one thing that things I'm just gonna state that just don't work for me personally. When you're having an intrusive thought, the last thing that you want to do is pretend like you're not having it. And so, for me, singing works, but one thing I've noticed that doesn't work. So for me, I'm an artist, so I spend like most of my time creating work to sell, right? Whenever I am having an intrusive thought and I sit down to start like creating work and like listening to music and making work, it makes it 10 times worse. Like my brain's like, oh, you're gonna ignore me, ah! And it's like starts screaming and it gets so much worse and I freak out and I'm like, oh my God. So I cannot work on art. And I don't know how everybody else feels about that, but whenever I try and like pretend like I'm not having it and just go about my normal life, I can't do it. If I try and like think of video ideas while I'm having an intrusive thought or try and record a video, no, it's not gonna work. Or if I try to like just pretend like I'm not having it and go about my day, oh no. Like for example, if I'm having an intrusive thought and I put my headphones on and I just turn on music, it'll make it 10 times worse. And it's weird, and we're all different, so you need to figure out what works for you. So I'm just listing some suggestions. Also, I think that this is, again, I'm trying not to be unhelpful and unclear, but if you're at home, like making a cup of tea, like get in the habit of getting into self-care mode. Turning on a tea kettle, making a cup of tea, if it's too much, because I understand some people have intrusive thoughts and they like can't even like if they move, it's to punch a hole in the wall. Like it's that bad. Maybe like, I know for me, like stopping and starting to like, I get really anxious and I pace back and forth. I like want to pull my hair out of my head. I'll start like clenching my muscles and like hurting myself in terms of like really clenching my muscles to a point where they're like stinging. I think like making a cup of tea, doing something, like I start kind of getting into nesting mode where I'll start cleaning my room, which is kind of nice because it's like I have a clean room. But like I think it's best to have an emergency plan and to go into self-care shock. Like to go ahead and like when you're having a panic attack, force yourself to go into self-care mode. Make a cup of tea, light incense, put on the comfiest clothes you can find, start singing a song, like kind of just have to like disrupting as much of it you can. Like the whole point is to make yourself as comfortable as possible because it's going to be a bumpy road. Like it's not going to stop the intrusive thought, but it's going to make it a lot easier to deal with. And so another thing is stretching really helps me. There's a really good YouTube channel called Yoga with Adrienne. She's really awesome. You've probably heard of her. She has a 30 days of yoga series. I'm not saying turn on a yoga video and start doing it because that's not gonna, for me personally, as a person with intrusive thoughts, that shit does not work. But I memorize some of the like moves and the transitions in her videos, like the kind of like the downward dog, then going into baby seal, and then like going into a plank, like all the different sequences. Memorize like maybe like 5 moves, and when you start having an intrusive thought, start doing those like few moves and stretching. It'll help like release some of that physical tension you have, I've noticed. Also, I love to write poetry. Sometimes it can be a hit or miss because sometimes it feels like how I feel when I like sit down to do art. It's like, no, you're not gonna ignore me, and my brain starts going crazy. But sometimes if I start thinking of like word sequences and thinking about rhymes and songs I can write and music, it helps disperse the intrusive thought. Again, what works for me may not work for other people. Also, it helps if you kind of imagine a grounding figure in your head. Like, think about a figure. It can be a loved one, or it can be, I have a person who I've made up in my head, and this person represents comfort, love. It sounds so wild. Like, you made up a person in your head. It's kind of like a person who represents, it's almost like my guardian angel. It's like a lovely, beautiful presence who's always supportive. And I think of that person holding me. And that helps. If I feel like I'm tired and I need to lay down, that's a good one. Imagining a presence, you know, creating all these good traits for that person, and then imagine that person holding you. Also, I'm just listing off a bunch of things at this point because so many things don't work and so many things do work. Giving yourself like a back massage and like rubbing your neck and your shoulders and just like whispering to yourself, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, shh, it's okay, you're gonna be fine. Like, you have a right to be upset. Shh, it's okay, it's okay. These are such little things that may sound crazy, but they work. Some of them do, some of them don't. Experiment with a bunch of them, because intrusive thoughts are things that happen daily. So some things that can help when you're in public, because I understand you may not be at home, so you might not be able to like make a cup of tea and like, you know, clean your room and do yoga. I mean, you can do what you gotta do if you're in public, but when you're in public and you can't like just go grab a cup of tea or can't do all these things, one thing that you can do is, of course, like I said, breathe in, breathe out. You can do it once, you can do it several times. I find it's helpful to do it once and then kind of roll out your neck a little bit. That helps to just kind of roll out your neck. Again, you're just kind of distracting yourself a little bit enough to decide or to see, hey, I'm having an intrusive thought and I'm gonna do something about it. And then one thing I've found that helps when I'm in public is just start closely examining nature. That can really help. Again, distracting yourself is distracting yourself is the goal here. And it's funny because some distractions work, some distractions don't. For me, like making art doesn't work as a distraction for me. It just makes it worse. But oddly enough, singing does work. The tea is really good. But yeah, closely examining nature. That's a good one for, especially if you're on the go. Taking the time to kind of like crack your knuckles and like kind of like stretch your arms in like minimal ways that don't make you look like a weirdo in public. Or if you want to look like a weirdo, look like a weirdo. But, you know, if you can afford to stop and buy a cup of tea, or like, it's just find ways to distract yourself, you know, because there's not one thing you can do that's gonna like, nothing's gonna just stop it dead in its tracks. I don't want to be like, think positive thoughts, but I know in my dialectical behavioral therapy workbook, they mentioned, you know, think about what you're going to name your future dog or your future child or your future cat or something like that. Or think about a good memory you had in the past. And these ones don't work as well on me. Some of them do. Think about what you want to do to decorate your future room. If you plan on moving, or if you want to redecorate the room that you're in now, like think about like, hey, what decorations do I want? Like, distract yourself, but figure out what distractions work and which ones don't. For many of you, creating and being creative may be a good distraction. I know for me, typically it amplifies my intrusive thought, but I think with any mental hindrance or mental breakdown or anxiety attack or panic attack of any sort, the first thing to do is identify that you're having it, and then just do some type of self-care. That's kind of the formula here. Identify that you're having it, and then self-care. It's really important. I know for me, if I had to be honest about everything that I did, I identify that I'm having the panic attack or the intrusive thought that leads to a very visceral panic attack. I breathe in, I breathe out. Typically I grab, and this is like, I'm doing this like frantically because I get very jittery and antsy. Like somebody like gave me like 1 million like grams of caffeine, and I have a bunch of essential oils and a bunch of like essential oil spray. So I douse myself in like essential oil spray. Specifically, the smells lavender and lavender, eucalyptus helps. I've kind of created my own concoctions too. I have like a rose petal one. I just spray myself with whatever smell I feel like I identify with the most, or that I feel like will soothe me in that moment. I also have like essential oils that I'll dab behind my ears in different places. So smells are the first thing that ground me. So I didn't mention that before, but douse yourself in some type of smell. That'll be helpful. Some type of essential oil. And then I typically like will light a candle or light some incense. That's the second thing that helps. Again, the smells help to keep me grounded. And I usually turn off my lights too. Just turning off my lights. Kind of allowing myself to breathe and to kind of figure things out. And typically I'm freaking out at this point, but I just kind of turn off my lights and allow myself to breathe. Then I kind of pace back and forth and just kind of let myself pace back and forth. I might do a couple of my yoga moves and I'll get freaky and I'll get really like whacked out and I don't want to do yoga anymore. And so I go ahead and I'll change into something like really loose fitting, and I'll start to sit on my bed and I'll kind of rub my shoulders and be like, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. Shh. If I can do that, then I'll start making a cup of tea, and then I'll kind of do like a minor, like 1 minute cleanup of my room, just because having a clean space surprisingly does help. If you can just do some quick organizing, it helps take your mind off things sometimes. Or also sitting in my bed, pulling out a book, pulling out like whatever it takes. I already list some things, but that's kind of how I do things, and it helps, like especially the turning off the lights, the making the tea, the dousing yourself with smells. It's all ways to not numb yourself and to keep yourself conscious and to acknowledge that you're having this experience and to validate it and to take care of yourself, you know, putting on some good smelling lotion. Like, and I'm not saying like self-care, drink water, but like it's more like there is no foolproof thing you can do to avoid this. Sorry. I gotta stop doing that before Graveyard Girl like scalps me. But ew, gross. She's gross. But yeah, like these are all things you can do. Also, maybe invest in some crystals. I have quite a few crystals myself, and just find some that you identify with, that you feel like you connect to, and just hold them close. There's read up on them, educate yourself on them. Spray your face with some type of facial spray or mist, wash your face, take a shower, do several of these steps. But I'm listing off a bunch because I totally understand that like some of these do not work for me, some of these definitely work for me, and none of them completely erase the experience or stop you from having said intrusive thought, but they definitely do like alleviate a lot of the stress. 100% they do. And it just allows you to kind of like acknowledge, it's like, I can't explain it, but like, have you ever like cut your leg or like gotten a bruise or a cut, or like you've hurt yourself and you kind of like soothe it and you kind of like make it feel good? This is a practice of soothing is what we're doing. We're not pretending like we don't have the pain. We're not pretending like it's not there. We're not pretending like we can do one thing and make it better. Because when you have a cut, you can like pour all the alcohol you want in it. You can put all the band-aids you want on it. You can kiss it all you want. It's not going to get better until it's ready to get better. It's the same way with us on the inside. We will get better when like our intrusive thought will go away on its own, but we have to let it run its course. There's nothing we can do. So we have to kind of soothe ourselves through it. And when you soothe yourself, it'll lessen it. It'll make it a lot better. So yeah, also I'm starting to have a little bit of an intrusive thought now. I'm just like, but also if you're the type of person who like likes YouTube videos, Lisa Ain't Romano has some great meditations. I don't know what works for people, but YouTube videos can help people sometimes. They just kind of get out of their heads, but be careful of dissociation. That can be something that can happen there. Also, I think also the biggest tip of all is just to make sure that you kind of take the time to maybe take 1 minute to get silent after your intrusive thought and kind of reflect on it, and maybe write some things down, acknowledge like what you did right, keep track of some progress that you're making, but eventually you'll learn that you'll start to soothe yourself. And I've really gotten good at soothing myself, and so it's still hard. And today was one of the worst days of my life when it came to intrusive thoughts. My brain was like, haha, you want to have a good day? Yay. And it just like ran. But yeah, I'm gonna stop rambling. I'm gonna go ahead and cut this video off here. Thank you so much for watching. I want to say thank you to my 7 subscribers. Oh, I got 2 more from last time. Okay. But yeah, it's definitely just like hold on, I don't know, that is probably just really annoying to hear. It probably isn't even helpful, but I just want to give that new editing style or new video style a shot. Coffee Talkies, what? But yeah, intrusive thoughts are fucking awful and they're terrible, and I want to make sure I'm not like being like a BuzzFeed list of answers where I'm like, make tea, drink water, say a prayer. Like, I hate that. Like, I hate it when I look for mental health resources and it's like, make a cup of tea and just like take a shower and self-care. But like, some of those things do work, some of them don't. At the end of the day, nothing's gonna really like end it. Eventually it'll dissipate, but it's all about soothing yourself, and eventually these things, you'll get so good at them that the intrusive thought disappears. Like, it runs its course faster. And so that's kind of all I wanted to say. So again, thank you to my 7 subscribers. Thank you to everybody who's been supporting me lately. I don't have the most views in the world, but I think I'm doing pretty good for somebody who's been on YouTube for only like a month. So yeah, thanks everybody. And all right, it's been Gucci signing out. Bye.